Bom dia, episode 44, and it's a special one. Today we welcome a true Brazilian superstar to the show. He's a man who done it all, from a 2-year stint in F1 to dominating sports car racing in IMSA, with wins at the 24 Hours of Daytona and multiple IMSA championships. This guy has found success in pretty much everything with wheels, and maybe even a few without them, because a rumor has that his nickname is Buceta. What it means, we don't know. Maybe he'll explain it later, maybe not. One thing's for sure, I think it's going to be a very interesting story about his career. Ladies and gentlemen, Felipe Nasr. Welcome.
That's quite the intro, I have to say.
I'm sorry I had to use it.
Thanks, guy.
Didn't have a choice.
My pleasure to be here.
How are you?
I'm doing good. You guys?
Yeah, so far.
Busy times?
So far.
Yeah.
Oh, we can share it on the show. No, Greece made a new record today. It was 17 minutes late.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that happens when you move houses, huh? Not always goes to plan.
Yep.
But the most important thing,
Yeah.
you're moving countries or you're just moving somewhere close by? Just somewhere close by because, to make it a short story, we are planning to build a house, but it's a big delay and it's a big mess. And everything got changed and everything got messed up. So we needed to get something else because I sold my apartment now and it's just something temporary. But I never do it again. At least not myself. I will get a moving company or something, but this is the ever last time I move myself because
by yourself. It's a lot of stuff, isn't it?
A lot of stress with the girlfriend and it's a mess.
Oh, is the girlfriend that comes first, eh?
Yeah, she needs them to get new closets and then they are not big enough and then when you need to go back with the closet and then you need to go with the boxes down the stairs. Oh, I mean, it's the biggest shit ever.
Cold life.
Yeah.
Gotta get used to it.
Yeah.
And you, Felipe, you're at home in Brazil, or?
Yes, I'm in Brasilia. That's my hometown. That's where I was born. That's where all my parents live. You know, my friends, and that's the town I really started into racing and went to school. So a lot of connections.
You lived in Miami for a while, no?
I lived in Miami back in 2019 and 20 until the pandemic. And then I decided to move back. I felt I didn't really quite adapt it there. It was not what I was looking for. And anyway, as you know, racing is international, so it doesn't matter where you live. You know, you can go anywhere by the plane. And for me, traveling to the U.S. from Brazil is really simple because it's a direct flight, either overnight or in the morning. And the time zone difference is usually 1 to 2 hours if I'm on the East Coast. It's only when I go to the West Coast, it's a little more, a bit longer on the time. Yeah. But otherwise, it's super easy.
I always like to go to Miami, but indeed to live there full time could be exhausting. It felt like a lot of show and party.
It's a bit of a two contrast, right? Because I'm the kind of guy who likes to be enjoying the outdoor more. So I used to go run to the beach or, exercise outdoor. I'm a big, I like to go fishing. So that place had a lot of lakes around, a lot of parks around. So for me, it was like, great. This has all the things that I like to do. And, but the thing is, Miami is a town that it's very rare for people to live there. They either come and go. You have foreigners. And then the period I was there, I started seeing a lot of people moving to Miami. And you could see now after the pandemic, there's a lot of, people from California, New York, from elsewhere in the world, and it became more of a stressful city because you get your car, it probably takes an hour, 40 minutes to go anywhere. Yeah. And I was like, man, I don't want to deal with that stress. And for me, home is home. When I go back to Brazil, I have, I can see my friends from the past and I can work on my connections or events that I do, sponsor wise. And the climate is good. I can travel to the sea. I'm only by plane. I'm about an hour away from the sea if I want to go there for the weekend. So I just felt more balance here.
Yeah.
In Miami, I think was more of a chaotic scenario of, you think you have that ideal view of Miami, but it's
Yeah.
actually different when you're actually living in a place.
From where in Brazil, where were you born, or where do you always go back to?
Yes. So Brasilia, the capital, it's where actually I was born, and that's where I travel back and forth.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So you always go
Yeah.
visit
And
them.
Curitiba is close to there, no? The racetrack.
Curitiba is about, I would say, an hour and a half. São Paulo, an
Yeah.
hour and a half away by plane.
Okay.
Rio, about an hour, 40 minutes. Because Brasilia, if you look, it's right on the center of the country, pretty much. So for me to travel elsewhere in the country, domestic, it's simple.
Yeah.
So, Felipe, like with all of our guests, we always start off by hearing your story from your career. I think you have so far a pretty impressive career, but especially I think an interesting. I know it a little bit. How your career got going, like with your family, like with Amir Nazar, your
Yes.
dad as well. Maybe you can tell us a bit the story
Correct.
of that and how you got into racing, because it's quite the family affair, I guess. Almost even more than our families.
Yeah, it started, I can say I was lucky enough to be born in a family that was already involved into racing. So my uncle Amir and my father Samir, they both started, like in go-karts at a very young age, and they started racing at their own. My father was a mechanic, and my uncle used to race the go-karts. Things started to get a little more serious. They sold a few things here and there, and they went to the UK. My uncle he in fact drove for, I can't remember the race team now, but he did 2 years in Formula Ford UK. Even did the Formula Ford Festival where I think he raced against Eddie Irvine, Steve Robertson, which was later my manager. I think maybe Mika Hakkinen. I can't recall all the names, but probably some really, really good guys that he raced against. And I think, they went there without any other knowledge. They just went to face what it was like to race abroad. And I felt they felt the bar was raised really high. And then they decided to come back after 2-3 years. After living in the UK, they came back to Brazil, but they met a lot of suppliers along the way. They restarted a relationship with people from Dallara. So I know they got involved with a lot of people along the 3 years that they were in the UK. And when they came back to Brazil, they said, you know what, let's start a race team here. And South America at the time was really booming. You had a lot of young drivers that, my father and my uncle, they started a South American F3 team. And later in the years, they had also a stock car team, touring cars, national touring cars, prototype, and several drivers from ex-Formula 1 drivers went through Formula 3 seasons with them to get prepared before flying to Europe, for example.
Quite some names, I think, no? If I saw it
A
correctly.
lot of names. I think names like Antonio Pizzonia, Luciano Burti, you name it. Probably the list is pretty long. I know Helio Castroneves. So there were several drivers that came through his race team due to his experience and knowledge of my father and my uncle team. Everybody felt like that was almost like a pre-season before they went to Europe. They even did either they did a full testing schedule here in Brazil with different racetracks, and also having a year under their belts in F3 here. I felt like it helped them a lot before they fly to Europe. So they became pretty let pretty popular, I would say, in the late 80s to 90s, early 2000s with their race team. And I was just a young guy around them. And at the time, I didn't know what was going on. I was just, as a fan of racing, I used to like to be at the racetrack, watching the races, speaking to the mechanics, speaking to engineers. But as a kid, honestly, I had no pressure at all to be a race driver. I didn't even think I was going to be a race driver at first, because I was more into football and things like that.
Which is also
Even
very
played
big in
tennis.
Brazil, huh?
It's huge. It's huge. It's every kid's dream is to first to be a football player, then they think about racing later. So I was kind of in that way. Even played for a little national team, junior team for a couple of years, for 2 years, I think. And at the age of 7, that's when one of the truckies of my dad's race team, he said, "You know what? I'm gonna take you to do something different today. I'm gonna bring you to the go-kart track, and I have something ready, prepared for you. If you like it, great. If you don't, we just went there to try something new." And for me, was as a kid, I remember giving my first laps in a go-kart was like so different to any other thing that I've done at that age. And it was so remarkable to me, the feeling of speed, the smell, the tires, the everything. It just, that memory stays very sharp. And I remember with a couple of laps, they were already, "You're going too fast," kind of thing. And I was fine. I wasn't really, how can I say, like, overexcited. I was just happy what I was doing
Thinking of the DOP already, like that.
already. Probably. So at the age of 7, I tried a go-kart for the first time. And I remember my father came to see me doing a couple of laps, him and my uncle, and they were like, "This is not normal." I mean, they thought I was gonna be scared at first because of the noise of the engine. It was, I can't remember I can't really recall the engine at the time, but I think it was like a, I don't know, how they call those. What was the name of the engine then? Anyway, pretty simple cadet style engine at the time. So that was it. That was the beginning of all. And I remember my father asking. I said, "I really enjoyed, but I don't know if I want to go back." And then that's when I felt like my father really tested me in terms of if I wanted to do that or not. He said, "Well, this is the number of your mechanic. If you ever want to go back, you have to call him, not me."
Okay.
Why is that?
Yeah. So at the time, I didn't know why he was doing that. So it took me several weeks to come back and say, "You know what? I want to go back," because my father had a really good friend that he owned a little race car team, a go-kart team. And in fact, I gave him a call a couple of weeks later, and I said, "I want to start testing. I want to start training." And that's when it all started. That's when it all kicked off. And my father and my uncle, they were always busy with their other race stuff
Right,
that was
yeah.
going on. So on weekends, they were always somewhere, either Argentina, Brazil, or elsewhere in a racetrack around Brazil, doing one of their series that they were involved. And so I spend a lot of time with this one mechanics and this go-kart race team for so long that they became a second family to me. And then I started racing abroad. Sorry, not abroad, but racing around Brazil in the main championships, which then I started to be successful in these early days in go-karts. So I was traveling by myself, already getting to the planes. I remember I had to wear this big credential saying that I was underage, but I was authorized to travel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was always someone on the other airport that I was arriving to pick me up. It was funny at hotels. Sometimes they will let me check in because I was underage, and I had to have someone, let's say, supervising and just give the authorization of checking in hotels for. It's funny things that it goes by like this, but for any other kid might be different, right? And
Yeah.
and for us at the age of 8, 9, 10 years old, you're already
Yeah.
dealing with hotels and travels, traveling by car.
But also, I mean, it was a bit similar, I think, also for Lawrence that, and I think if everyone who race, it also helps you a way to mature in at a very young age, I
Absolutely.
find, because it learned me so much about a lot of things. But indeed, at that moment, you're like, oh, it's a bit scary in the beginning, but
And you
afterwards,
get
now
used
I'm
to it.
happy I did it. Yeah,
You get used to it at a young age, and for
For
us,
sure.
it's normal to take a plane and to travel. And I saw at school when I was 15, 16, other kids, some of them never took a plane, and we were flying alone, let's say. So definitely
yeah.
help. But you think your father did this was it to do it on purpose for you to learn how the world works, or was he very busy with the
I
race team and that was kind of his
I
way?
think it's a bit of both, but at the same time, he could feel the temperature of how much is Felipe committed to that.
Yeah,
Because
true.
I was still going to school from Monday to Friday, and on Friday midday, I would take on the plane to fly to São Paulo or elsewhere in the country to do a pre-practice on late Friday, let's say Friday afternoon, then qualify Saturday and race Saturday, race Sunday. So where all the other kids were already practicing from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So for me, I think he was testing how much he's committed and how much he can adapt really quick into getting into the flow of racing. Like you get into the racetrack, you need to know your best lines, your setup, your decisions, and so I think in a way, I think they were preparing me without me knowing in some ways that could be something bigger along the way. And for sure, that made me do better decisions in a shorter time
Mm.
because I didn't have all the week like other go-kart, drivers at the time. And
In general, I think also it's some people who don't really know sport at a high level. Okay, motorsports involve a lot of travel, maybe more than playing football at your regional club. But say, you missed school, or you didn't finish school, you this or that. The things we learned about life, taking care of ourselves, business works, sponsorship
yes,
works, working in a team, always performing those things. I mean, from in my
it's a
case, I all
number.
learned them at a young age at karting and not at school. I think it's an invaluable life experience in the end, which is difficult
Absolutely.
to
Yeah,
explain
yeah,
if you don't know it. But
And you're making decisions every time, right?
exactly.
You're making
Yeah.
decisions whether to wake up early or not, or where to train more or not, or whether to speak to that mechanic or not, or one sponsor or not. And at the time when the race team of my father was running, I remember I've met already one of the sponsors who was sponsoring the race team that I got together to say, hey, I'm starting in go-karts. If you feel like, you already start at a young age trying to feed that way of a professional view of what could you become in the future, right?
And so my father
So
did with me as well. I don't know if he did it with you. He was like when I started I think it was at the end of go-karts or Formula 3. He was like, look, that he was in business as well. Here's the list. I don't know. It was 2025 names. Here's a list of contacts of companies I know because I work together with them. Um, Go and ask if they want to sponsor you. And that was it.
yeah. I
And he
remember.
was like, here's an example of another driver, like a magazine with his name and budget and what's so on. It's like, this person can help you make something similar and then it's up to you. So I was like, okay, making the magazine and I still have it somewhere. And like, it was a nice magazine, but like name, what did I do? How could you sponsor? Picture on the go-kart. And then when I was 15, 16 years old, what I did is I looked up the address of the company, put it in an envelope, sent it by post.
Sent to them.
Yeah. And obviously nobody ever replied to me, but that actually then I took it further and then learned from that, and you learn how to do business in the end and get going into the
Absolutely.
sponsorship. And it is, I mean,
Yeah.
those are things you don't learn at school. Huh?
No,
For sure not. And that's I would say we get not only competitive in the racetracks, but you start feeling like, okay, I can maybe find another sponsor here or there, or you meet new people, you make connections, and not saying that something will happen right away, but you create a relationship for the future. So
exactly.
I feel like racing at young age teaches you a lot of decisions you have to make, look after yourself, being away from home, and you're dealing with adversity all the time, because it's not like you are comfortable sitting in your couch all the time. So I feel like at a very young age, we already start engaging these skills for the future. But that's how pretty much started then. I started racing from the age of 7 to until 14 to 15 in go-kart. Only in Brazil. That's one thing I regret. I wish we had the budget to go do a race or two in Europe, or maybe do a one season of, karting in the European tracks. But at the time, we just didn't have a way of funding this. So I only stayed in Brazil, won the main championships in Brazil, the main major Brazilian championships that I had to race. And then by the age of 15 was when I started transiting to Formula cars.
Also still in Brazil, or then you did
So I remember I did when at the age of that's a funny story. At the age of 15, I remember I got invited to do the Formula BMW scholarship that was going on
Right.
in Valencia, right? But at then I haven't even driven a Formula car at all. So I went to Valencia and I was like, shit, those guys already know how to drive. I'm fucked, like what I'm gonna do here. So, because the way they sold the scholarship at the time was like, you had to have zero experience. We will teach you all this stuff, blah, 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 all this stuff. Racing, I got,
Yeah.
that was a bad decision for sure. Anyway, got through the scholarship. I think it rained a lot on the day that they were about to choose the selected winners of the scholarship. And I wasn't included in the top 3, so I didn't get the scholarship at all. And I feel I was at the age of 15 at the time. And then everything went quiet for a while. Like I said, okay, what I'm going to do next. And then my father and my uncle were thinking maybe I could jump into Formula 3 right away in South America. Could be an option for the following year. So I still did a couple of go-karts at the age of 15. And then my uncle received a call from Formula BMW Americas that they wanted to do a race. They were going to do a race in Interlagos as the final race of the year. Which was together with Formula 1 at the time. And they were going to send 2 show cars for my uncle to run, and they needed 2 drivers. So we brought this car. I think these cars came from Germany, and they were really show cars. They were not race cars ready to go. So there were a lot of parts they had to change. The cars were not to the latest spec and so on. They gave us 2 days of testing. So we tested here in Brasilia, in our home track. And we went to the race in Interlagos, right? Which at the time, I think Jun Cadella was racing. Alex Rossi was there. I don't think the championship was as big as Formula BMW Europe or Germany or UK, but the America's championship was going on, and that was the final round happening in Brazil. So here we go. Then we line up the car. in on the weekends, in São Paulo. I never been to Interlagos before, if not as a spectator, just to watch a race, but I never been to the racetrack. And I finished third on that one of the races. I'm pretty sure I either finished fourth and third, or I did third on two races on the weekend. And I remember that was really my first, impression of getting into an international event. And nobody knew me at the time or anything. And I remember Mario Tyson was really excited about it, and he came to talk to me. Augusto Farfus made the introduction with all the BMW people at the time. And Mario was like, you know what, you have to be on the European series. You cannot be racing in Formula BMW Americas. You got to be on the European side, because you came here for one weekend and you're already been fighting within the top three. I think you should consider, racing there. So then we started to rush and see what were the possibilities to race in 2000. That happened in 2008, that race that I did. And then in 2009, we started to look at options to race in Formula BMW European. And I remember I got connected.
You won pretty much everything.
Yes.
Right?
That's when I got connected to Antonio Ferrari, which was the owner of Euro International at the time.
The racing? Is it the racing team or?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, Antonio. So he invited me to do a test in Mexico for him, because they were doing the Formula BMW World Finals there. And on the Monday or Tuesday after the finals, I went to test the car. And I remember I think I broke the record of the track from that weekend from a BMW. And Antonio was like, okay, we have to find a way to put Felipe to race next year with us in the European Championship. And the homework we had was to go back home, and we found probably 1/3 of that budget to go racing in Europe.
Okay.
And I remember I was at school. I was in school probably early January, end of January, early February, and my father gave me a call, said, I'm gonna pick you up. You're traveling to Europe today. We're gonna find a way for you to race. And you're gonna be living in Italy. We have a race team for you there, and I think everything is gonna work out for you. We'll find a way somehow. That's how he gave me the call. And I remember leaving the school, like, even before the break, mid-morning, and I left the school. I said, I don't know if I'm coming back here. So I said bye to my friends. I'm leaving. I'm getting on a plane this afternoon. So I got back home, packed up my stuff, and there I go. I went to Italy. My uncle came with me.
Okay.
So we met Antonio, we met the team.
That's next level in life experience.
That's
next
boys.
level. Yeah, that's how it all happened, man. I was not expecting that at all. And
that's most of the time, if you hear a lot of the stories from Brazilian race car drivers or outside of Europe, Australia, whatever, 15, okay, you got an opportunity, pack your bags, go, and then mom, dad, see you.
And that's how it happened. I didn't know if I was coming back that year, or I had no idea. So my uncle and I, we got on the plane, straight to Europe, landed in Italy, landed in Milano. I remember we drove to Novara, where the race team was based. So I met with Antonio, I met all the mechanics, a very simple race team. But at the time they had Juncadella, I remember, was racing with a Red Bull backing car. And I was going to be his teammate. I think it was a 3-car team. But there I was living in a small apartment, like a studio apartment. I had a bicycle. That's all I had to go around town. And my uncle was there for the early 2 months. He stayed with me in the apartment, so I could get settled in. I could know, maybe just to know where to go around town, not to get lost. So that's how it started. Then then I remember back then there was a lot of testing from the BMW. You could go testing a lot. There's a lot of preseason testing. But for me, I didn't knew any of the tracks. Zero. Like I've never jumped. I've never been to Europe. I had to learn the language, started to speak Italian. My English was still kind of so-so at the time. So like you said, school doesn't teach us that. So
No,
life
not at
teaches
all.
a lot more. So I had to learn a new culture. I was living away from home. I had no friends then. So I started to make a relationship with all the mechanics. They became my friends. They called me for lunch, for dinner.
That's nice.
I rode my bicycle everywhere in town for an ice cream or for lunch. Because, if I stayed home, I'll be bored. So I had to do something.
How was that for you? Was it difficult, or were you like actually easygoing and immediately started to, make
Uh,
friends? And because I mean, it's a big
I,
step at the end.
yeah, it's a big step, but I had to force myself some days just to say, man, I need to get out of the house, ride my bicycle 15 minutes to the workshop of the race team and see they working on the cars, make them a bunch of questions. I probably was, make them annoyed too because I was there all the time. Uh, but that's how I felt. I felt like I had no other option, right? And for me, again, was the beginning of something bigger. So dealing with that, I knew I was preparing for something major down the road. And I have to say, they're really friendly to me. They made me feel at home. They try to make me feel like comfortable in town. It was a really small town. I don't know if you guys know, but Novara is a really small town between Milano and Torino, I think.
Rings a bell, but
Um,
I'm not sure.
yeah, anyway, then the best part of all was when we went testing and racing. I just
You
felt
could
like
actually be focused.
way more connected, way more. I could see that was the purpose of all. Like, this is why I came here, and I'm not gonna let any of these worries, get me through. This is what I came for, and I have one goal. One goal here is to get on this race car and do my best.
On the
And
end,
that's
I
how it
think
happened.
at that age, you don't have a crystal ball, but I think you can say that the sacrifice was worth it. You learned
It was
some
worth
life
it.
experience, and in the end, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you won from the BMW, you won Formula 3 in England,
Yeah.
you went GP2, and you ended up in Formula One with Sauber. So
Yes.
it was worth
It was worth the
the
sacrifice for sure.
sacrifice. And in the end, you can
That's
always
pretty
argue
cool.
in the sacrifice. You obviously don't see your family, but this is something, like you said, nobody can ever take away, or no life lessons can
Not
replace
at
that.
all.
Let's say.
No, and
Not
that's
at
pretty
all. It
cool.
was
That
it was it was just the desire really of going somewhere
Go
that I
on.
could say, okay, this is what I want. And of course my family helped me a lot in this transition, and every now and then my sister would find a way to travel. She stayed with me for a couple of days, or one of my cousins. Uh, but during the season, for sure, there was a lot of traveling with the team and a lot of times alone at home.
Yeah.
Uh, and money was short at the time, so I maybe flew one time back to Brazil during the year. I don't know if it was during my birthday or something. I said I want to go back home. I want to see my friends. But that was the dream, and I was chasing it. I was
fair enough.
chasing the F1 dream, and like you said, won Formula BMW right away on that first year, and I had several proposals of different managing brands and managers, or there was a lot of good proposals early on in my career that I could set the tone and leave my family aside in terms, well, they don't have to put any money
Yeah,
anymore, because and I felt that was the breakthrough really. So 2009 was a really important year because it opened the doors for me internationally, and people got to know, okay, this is Felipe Nasr. And we had several offers from different, you know, backing groups, or I think Red Bull was one of them. I remember at the time Gravity was one of them. Even Mercedes at the time. There was a lot of young, there was a lot of young driver programs back then, if you guys recall. Even BMW was seriously involved.
It
2009
stopped short after.
was the year they stopped. They pulled the plug. And I remember after winning the Formula BMW European Championship, Mario said, "You have a F1 test. I'm going to give it to you." And that all went to the drain. So
Yeah,
I
because they stopped
could
the
see,
program.
yeah, because they. So
Okay.
I could see a big shift in motor racing. 2009, things started to get very difficult to move forward in terms of the backing, finding the right money, getting involved in junior programs. I felt like everything started to shrink because the money was not there available as it used to be. So for me, though, we could feel that shift. And I ended up, I ended up signing up an agreement with Steve Robertson and David Robertson, which were at the time the managers of Kimi Raikkonen. And they said the risk is on us. We will do everything for Felipe to get into Formula One. And after he was earning his F1 contract, we'll then start getting that money back. We'll find an agreement to. So I ended up signing an agreement with him because for me at the time was the most sensible, a safe approach. And he really did think more than racing. He said, "No, I wanna make sure Felipe has all the structure, physically, mentally. He will have a trainer I will have a place for him in the UK. We'll look after him." So my parents were really comfortable with that decision.
So a proper management, and not like some others which ask you to pay them from day one to pretend like they're
I have to say
managing.
they were really professional, and they called me almost every day. What are you planning this week? If they were in the UK, we would go out for lunch, and they were really pushing hard to make me feel comfortable. And then again, another move to the UK was different because I was already getting used to Italy, which had a more of a the climate was
Brazilian type.
different, the people was different, a bit of a Brazilian way. So then I moved to the UK. It was another shock for me, climate-wise, and I felt like, man, all my friends now that I made in Italy, they are gone. So I have to start from zero again. But that's when they really put in a plan to say, okay, we'll have to start working on sponsors for Felipe in Brazil. Everything started to get more serious back then. The expectations, the results on the track, my technical knowledge of setting up a car and knowing the tracks in the UK were really difficult because you show up at the racetrack. It could be snowing, it could be rainy, 2 degrees, and the tires are ice cold. So there was a lot of big changes once again for me.
Well, at least shortly after, I think 2015 was your first year as a full season Formula One driver. So with Sauber, that's where then you achieve your ultimate goal, I would say.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe you can tell us how that started, because I think that's what you dreamed of since you were a kid.
Absolutely. And it's all part of the preparation. I feel like winning Formula BMW, winning British F3 on my second year was important. Did my stints in GP2, which is now called Formula 2. And then I was a test driver for Williams for 1 year. I learned a lot there as well. And then made the transition to Sauber in 2015. Ultimately, that was my goal. To be in Formula One and to be fighting for big results. But then it comes the two sides of the coins in Formula One, because that first year, everything went super, everything was lining up to be a super positive year. And I remember my first race in Australia, I managed to finish 5th right away. Scored, I think, 27 points during the season. I think I was just behind Verstappen as the best rookie that year. But then Sauber started to go in a really bad situation because the team. I remember Peter Sauber saying that they got all of us together and said we have to find a solution for the team because we're gonna go bankrupt. It's really in bad shape. We have to sell the team for someone. And that's when the management that was responsible for Marcus Ericsson at the time stepped in the negotiations and said, we'll take over the team and we'll run it from here. And I just felt a big shift on the team from that on. You know, I was pretty much stuck because I signed a 2-year contract with Sauber. And looking back, I wish there was a way I could find a way to get out of the team in 2015 because there were a lot of interest of all the teams to go elsewhere, but I was stuck contract-wise. So I had to stick to the season of 2016. A lot of people have left Sauber then at the time. You just know if you don't prepare a season, even in junior series or professional series, the build-up is so important that it's almost dictating the next season how it's going to be. So that season was a disaster in 2016. The car had zero funding, no performance. It was a really difficult side of Formula One that I haven't seen yet.
Right.
You were fighting to be, second last on the grid or maybe 16th, 15th as a race result. So you start to get frustrated, right, as a driver, because all the early years you spend on let's say on single seaters, you always
Trying to win.
You're trying to win because everybody has kind of the same equipment in a way. And in Formula One, you just see the big contrast of the two sides of the coin, right? And that's
How
when
was it?
everything's.
You can go.
Say that again, Russ.
Yeah. How was for you if you could say not in one word, but I mean, we've both also been dreaming about Formula One, so it's cool to have someone on the podcast who actually, I think it's the first one who has been to F1, I guess, if I'm not wrong. How would you explain that, or how would you say the experience is to be in F1? Is it like everybody sees on the TV, or it's always sunshine, it's amazing, it's the biggest thing ever? Or you have things
No,
like, well, it's actually,
no, it's not at all like what we see on the TV, on whatever they call the shows that you see every now and then on TV. Especially when you're driving for smaller privateer teams. It's there's so much going on. I would say you need to have a lot of talent. You need to have the right backing, but you also need to have a lot of the political side on your side too, because
Uh,
yeah.
those race teams, they make decisions based on other things apart from talent. If talent would make your way through, you could be in any race team, honestly. But there's so much. I felt the environment, first of all, the environment itself in Formula One was very selfish, especially, internally. You trying to work on your own car, in your own team, your own engineers. For sure, you have the information of the other car and so on, but it's never the same, let's say, trust that you expect, right? And even outside, you go out on the paddock and you don't talk to the team next door. It's only a few people that you really meet along the way that are quite open to, to call it like a relationship. But it's a very the ego of that paddock is so big that it's kind of a
yeah,
weird energy in some places, right?
bit toxic sometimes.
Yeah, and very toxic. So that's why having these three elements that I said, and having this political side on you, being protected and talking to the right people and so on, for sure, it's what can keep you for longer in the sport if you're talking about Formula One. But at the time you go to the racetrack, and I knew my car was probably 2 or 3 versions downgraded to what the latest spec of the car is, or to my teammate or to the engine, or and that happens on every race team. You see that every now and then. It's either a front wing,
and this nobody knows who's watching TV.
Exactly.
Yeah, if it's a new floor or even tire warmers. I remember I was using back then in Sauber still the BMW days tire warmers. And you used to go out in qualifying. You have one tire at 95 degrees, the other one at 87, and one tire at 100 degrees. So what do you expect to be doing, right?
Yeah, that's great. And this nobody sees, nobody knows.
Nobody knows, but that's the level of the lower teams, of midfield teams. But imagine on a further step, like the technical people they have, right? Maybe they have people with no experience, and that's what I found. I was like, man, I can almost engineer the car by myself. By the setup feelings that I had don't have to be data driven. We'll go by the simple things, the basic things. But that's show. Of course, we're not talking about. For sure, if you talk about the high-end teams, it's another level. It's another level of technical people, of investment, the funding, and so on. So for me, I got to feel and experience what was F1 like on the good and the bad, right? Because the first year I put on the table a lot of good results. I had a lot of good opportunities. And in the second year, it was almost like dragging myself, what I'm doing here. You almost start losing the purpose why you're there. And it came at the final race in 2016, one of the final races in Brazil, and I scored 2 points for Sauber. We had 0 points in the whole season, scored 2 points for them in the Brazilian Grand Prix, we had tremendous rain. A lot of the conditions were horrible. And I scored 2 points for Sauber. I started last on that race, I remember, and finished 9th. And those 2 points were worth probably $50 million US dollars on prize money for the team, because we got up on the top 10 of the constructors. And I remember the next week they called me for a meeting and say, Felipe, we have to give you notice that you ain't going to stay in the team. We thank you for your services. And I argue, I said, wait a minute, but I just gave you guys the best result you could imagine. And I doubt you have any sponsor that can bring that much money on pure results. And their answer was like, wow, it could have been you or it could have been your teammates. We have made a decision. We just let you know that we thank you for your services and wish you the best for the future. Simple as that. And that showed me the two sides of the coin. All those years fighting for a dream and for a goal just went to the drain like that.
So that's another almost, let's say, a story I'm as interested in as what Teresa asked. Is you achieve your dream, and then obviously after 2 years, you could almost say you achieve your nightmare of the dream. So how was life after that? Was it tough?
It was pretty difficult in the beginning. It was pretty difficult in the beginning because there's a lot of information to process at first. Also emotionally, that you feel like, what I'm going to do next. It's November, the end of the year. And what I'm going to make professionally, what I'm going to decide next, what's going on, right? And there were a few offers of, test driver here and there, or simulator driver, or I remember Formula E at the time was starting to kick in. There was a few offers in there, but honestly, I didn't want to adventure again. I was like, I need some time for myself to think, what does Felipe want again? So I took almost 6 months off from 2016 to 2017, let's say until May, I haven't sit on a race car at all. I was back home in Brazil. I was living in Europe at the time. I had gone back home. Again, another shocking because I was now back home. I had, what else I'm going to do? You wake up the next day and you start thinking, right? You were just so busy all year long with all the F1 duties and sponsorship, traveling, and now you just find yourself at home, right? And then gradually I started to work on myself again, like felt the energy to go back and work out, the desire to be on a race car again. And I started contacting a few teams here and there. And funny enough, I received a call from Lando Norris management group. And they wanted me to go in Europe to basically prepare Lando for a Formula 2 season, where they would have, at the time, this was fully confidential. I couldn't say at all of these things because Lando was still to be a Formula 2 driver, but they wanted to prepare him as best as possible. So they had 2 Formula 2 cars on the track.
Yeah.
They had 2 Formula 2 cars on the track. We went from Silverstone to Budapest, Portugal, Paul Ricard. I think we went to maybe 8 or 9 racetracks privately. We had 2 cars on the track and we would replicate a race weekend with him. Free practice, qualifying, 2 races. And my job was to make him, I had to give him all the information, like how you manage the tires, how you set up the car. And that was basically my first job after quitting F1 and then having the first job was starting this. I was kind of coaching Lando then for a couple of weekends, and I was traveling from Brazil to Europe and back and forth. I don't know for how many months, but I was trying to prepare him throughout different tracks. And I have to say, Lando right away, you could see the guy had the potential to be a Formula 1 world champion because he would pick up the information so quick. Within 3 laps, he would give everything the car had without knowing the track, or I was really impressed by his skills. I don't think he beat me over the course if we put all together, but it really impressed me by such a young age to be driving such powerful cars, bigger car, that he could really adapt to the situation really quick.
Okay.
So that was my first job.
I didn't know that story.
Yeah. So that was my first job after quitting F1. And then I gave a call to Action Express Racing, which was the team that I was, when I won British F3 in 2011, Sunoco was the fuel supplier of the UK championship. And the prize was that I would get a drive in Daytona the following year. So in 2012, I drove in the Daytona 24-hour race in a B team from Michael Shank, and I finished 3rd.
Okay.
And the following year, in 2013, I drove for Action Express, and they were super impressed.
Okay. Yeah.
And I remember Gary, the team director at Action Express, said, whenever you get tired of this Formula 1 shit, you give me a call. Like, very American, very straightforward. And he said, you give me a call, we'll be ready for you. And I'm okay. I feel like I was starting to watch endurance races, and I was like, man, this is really interesting. I remember watching in 2017 the 24 Hours of Daytona. You probably were there, Lawrence. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
2017.
Yeah.
So I was watching the prototype racing, and I'm like, man, those cars are really cool. They're racing, the dynamics. They spend so many hours, different conditions. You know what? I want to try that. And I gave Gary a call because I knew they were a top team running at the front. And I gave him a call right away. He said, give me a couple of days. I'll find a test for you. He called me maybe 1 week later. He said, I have a test for you in VAR in Virginia. You guys probably know the racetrack. You guys probably been there.
I'm
And he said, we have a shakedown to do before we go for this race. So we probably have one full morning for you to drive the DPI car. So I remember getting there, haven't even seen VAR at all. I didn't remember what the thing.
Interesting track to go with.
It's
the
an
DPI
interesting
car.
track with almost zero runoff. You have just the grass and
No
and
grip.
yeah, that's all you had really. So, and I remember we did the short version of the track because the DPI cannot go on the full track because it's kind of dangerous
Right.
to go on the back
Yeah.
side. So we did the short version of the track. And man, there was no such feeling of those early laps. I remember like if it was yesterday, like the feeling of the grip, the tires, was like I got so connected with the car that I was smiling for 10 laps. They didn't even call me to pit or anything. I was just driving by myself. And because I felt like all these senses were back as a race driver, I was like, man, I have the senses were so accurate and so alive that I felt the car connection again, the racetrack. And I was just happy to do that. I said, fuck, I can call it my job again. It's so good. This is so fun.
Yeah. You know what you missed.
And I knew I missed it right away. That was the message that I got. And the message I needed, really. And I remember that first outing, I did probably 15 laps. You know, the heart rate was going and I was, you know, happy to be back in a race car. That car produced really good downforce. I would say that car was probably had as good downforce as a GP2 car back then. Probably maybe a little less, but very close to it. The power level was good. The braking, you know, carbon brakes was a really nice car to drive, the DPI car. And they said, "Well, okay, we're gonna give you a new tire run now. See what you think. See what you want on the car, baby." And I just remember I played with the anti-roll bars, a new thing to me in the car. And the best feeling I had on a race car for a long time. Putting new tires, driving at VAR. I got back in the pits. They said, "Well, you just did the quickest lap we ever have here in VAR, so you're probably comfortable with the car. Is anything you wanna try?" And I said, maybe I just feel the car has a lot of understeer and so on. I did one more run and they took me out of the car. They said, we saw everything we had to see. You can go back home. And I took the plane back that day home. Within a week, they sent me a contract. They said, if you want to drive for us, this is what we expect from you. And so that started. That transition to sports car racing started in 2017, testing for those guys. In 2018, I did my first year in IMSA with Action Express and won the championship right away on my first year. I didn't know any of the US tracks. And I went on to win the championship with Eric Curran, which was my teammate at the time. So that really was the breakthrough and the transition to the US racing of sports car racing. So for me, I really felt that desire to be a race driver again and to fight for championships, fight for wins. And the rest is history, my friend. You know, that was it was quite the transition, but I'm glad I did it because it was I think a click I needed to have responsibility of my decisions, what would happen next. And yeah,
That's been
pretty much
pretty successful since. You won 3 times the championship and Daytona once or twice.
Yeah, I had Daytona. I've been unlucky a couple of times. I have several second places, which for me doesn't matter. But overall, I have one victory, which happened this year with the Porsche Penske Motorsport. So the transition to Porsche, came with the development of the 963. I did 1 year. I did a couple of GT races, one GTD, right? GTD in class against you, Lawrence, right? Funny enough, that was my first race for Porsche.
Yeah.
And you can only win one time at first, right?
Yeah.
So That was a really good record, a really good race, I have to say. If I had to watch the race. I remember watching the race in this final laps was probably one of the best racing skills and racing moments I record of
Yeah.
of pure racing. I'm not taking anything else in consideration, but pure racing. Watching you
I
guys
agree.
race at that final stint was unbelievable. I know the results go either way. Only one car can win, but what you guys delivered then, I remember Jam at the wheel, you at the wheel in your car, was incredible. What we watched there was,
Still
I
get
was like
goosebumps when
those.
I think about it now. So
Yeah, I said those guys have talents. They know what they're doing. And
He still cries about it now and then, but it was a nice moment.
secretly in my sleep,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And
No, but
so that
I
was
agree.
my beginning, the beginning of the journey with Porsche. After being with Action Express for a couple of years, I won 2 championships in DPI. Then I got the offer from Porsche to join the program and be responsible for the 963 in the early days. And then this year became probably one of the most successful years I had in sports car racing, winning Daytona overall. I think 2 wins in the season and 7 podiums, and that we became the overall winners, overall champions, manufacturer drivers, endurance champions. So it was probably one of the most successful years we had in sports car racing. So one for the records.
I'll follow you next year when I'm going to all the American racetracks because I don't know any of them.
Yeah, well, you'll have fun. You'll have fun. I can tell you
Yeah,
that.
sure.
I
I'm
think it will
very
be fun
curious
too.
how you will enjoy IMSA.
Yeah.
'Cause you did
Now,
Daytona, but that's pretty much it, right?
yeah, that's the only race I did. It's the only track I know. So I don't know any other racetrack there.
I'm a big fan of the dynamic of the racing in America. I'll be sharing the car with Lawrence. First time we're going to be sharing the car, so
Yeah.
new experience.
Well, I
So
hope you can repeat your Daytona win.
there you go. I'm up for that, my friend. Let's do
I'm
it.
still looking. It's still my 2 dreams is Daytona and Le Mans.
Yeah. Let's work on that.
We'll work on that.
Daytona for sure. It's another big goal I have, to win it again. And then of course Le Mans is another,
Big
child
one.
dream. It's a big one to win. So that was it, man. That was the story. There's a lot of, we could have spent
Yeah.
hours here talking about all the challenges that goes in between series, the
Yeah.
political decisions. I remember back in F3 times, I was racing against Kevin Magnussen, and Magnussen was a McLaren driver, and we were trying to negotiate with McLaren. There was a lot of things that, it's hard to talk about everything, but at least give you guys an idea of the transitions the sport can offer. Maybe you aim for one thing, but you end up on the other side. And what is the most important that I can tell is the professional fulfillment of being a professional race car driver, knowing that I'm doing what I want, with the capability that I know they have to trust me on the other side as a race team and be respected for that. And because, like I said, for talent, I know many drivers that could have the talent to be in Formula One, but they don't actually have the right time, the right team, the right opportunity. If you don't have all these 3
Comes a lot more
connected,
than talent. Huh?
it's a lot more than
Exactly.
talent. So
Yeah, we
And
covered
since
your
that you,
career. So now
yeah,
I think we can explain us what the word Bestetta means and where you got that nickname from.
well, that's no secret, is it? You probably know what it is.
Well, I know, but
It's
I
the
don't think
first thing
Dries knows.
I don't know. No, I have no idea.
uh, it means pussy, basically. You can put a beep that on the show, right?
Good.
Because I remember when I joined Porsche, Jaminet was always asking me like, tell me a few words in Portuguese. And the first thing I said, he just said, "Man, that's what I needed." The buceta word was all he wanted to hear, and that became a thing. He just kept calling me every now and then, and it
I
was
think
just
Matt
a
Campbell
funny.
and Mathieu Gemini, they just call you Busetta the whole day long.
Yeah, they call me all the time. Whenever you come to Brazil, don't say that, please. He can get you in trouble. But that's how it started. That's how it
Okay,
started.
fair enough. And you are like you mentioned earlier that you really love to go fishing. Like
I
explain it
love
maybe a bit,
fishing.
like just like a particular kind of fish that you always want to go, or any fish.
It became. I remember at a very young age, I was always a fan of fishing on lakes or rivers. Within Brazil, we have so many options. And sport fishing became such a thing in the later years. With my cousins, we like to travel at least once a year to the Amazon, where we catch and release. So basically, you have to put the fish back on the water. But you only see giant fishes there, and we go for one specific species there, which is a peacock bass, which has a very unique, colorful fish, which they get over 20 pounds. That in kilos, I don't know, over 12, but a super sportive fish. And we like going in the Amazon, not only for the fishing itself, but the environment. It's probably one of the most beautiful places I ever been. Unique sceneries, the culture. It's a very remote place, so you feel like you're such a small thing in this planet, because I don't know. It's one place I like to go to disconnect from the whole world that
Yeah.
we live in, with the
Yeah.
commitments, with the everything that we deal with the daily life. And one week that I go in the Amazon, I just feel like, you just
Yeah.
pretty much refresh yourself, and you're having a good time with your friends. So whenever you guys want to go, I do
I've never
have
done
a
it.
fishing agency myself that I have with my cousin. So whenever you guys
You
want to
really?
go, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
whenever you guys want to go, just type
Busetta
fishing
fishing.
experience. No, that will get you in trouble, mate. Fishing experience
That's another
BR.
business.
Yeah, that's another business.
Yeah.
But we can go fishing in the Amazon anytime.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I've never done it, but I can imagine it's a good way to disconnect. For sure.
it's a really cool. The structure, it's a full service, 24/7. It's such a beautiful place. It's hard to describe for you guys.
So you said it before. In 2 weeks, 2 weeks, we will do our first race together, Daytona. I will also do Sebring and Petit Le Mans. Are you gonna go for dinner with me or with Nick?
That's a tough question, man, because Nick likes probably the cheapest dinner he can find. I know chicken wings is one of his favorite things, and I'm not a big fan. So we probably have to find something, Lauren.
Yeah, I love
Maybe we'll
Nick, but
find
his
something in the
dinner
middle.
is Hooters or chicken wings or
Yeah.
wherever they have Mexican as well.
Mexican. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm also like last year said, okay, Nick, we go with you once and then you go, but he hates classy restaurants, and I don't like classy restaurants, but I like
Yeah, me
proper
too.
healthy food, like good food,
Yeah,
not
proper food.
made in fast food stuff.
Yeah. And it makes a
Uh,
difference, at least for me in race weekends.
yeah, I agree.
On day to day, like I'm not saying anything fancy, but just to have the right food, it makes you, I don't know. At least you don't want to go for some dodgy fish on the weekend. That will put you in a bad spot.
And I know I found a very good acai bowl place in Daytona.
Did you?
It's a 20-minute drive, but it was
The
one of the
cafe
best ones I've
place?
had actually.
Like a
I have it saved on
cafeteria?
my phone. It's a proper acai bowl place, but like good one.
Good. Yeah, let's
Good
go
one.
there.
So I'll invite
I'm
you
waiting
for
for
it.
that acai sponsor. We should find one together.
I tried
Six
with
acai
Oakberry,
sponsor
but
on it. No
But
success.
listen,
I had one in Belgium, but I got the acai bowl for free. Nice, but it's not really,
Okay.
not gonna help.
We can
Call it a
also work
sponsorship.
on that one.
Felipe, we always do this as well in the podcast, is to let you ask questions to us. So if you do, please shoot.
Well, I
You
know
choose
already.
one.
There's one question. Well, I
What's two?
asked, who is always the latest to arrive in things. I already have that answer.
That was clear. That was
Uh,
clear.
uh, I think I asked Lawrence before the show started as well. The age difference between you two was about 6, 7 years.
And yeah,
7 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what to ask you guys. I don't know. Simple one. Who's gonna win Daytona first? The overall. I think that's an easy one.
I think you guys won it last year, so can't win again this year. Uh, because of various reasons. So
Oh,
I think I have a good chance.
I obviously, I hope to win it in 25, but my dream is to win it. And honestly, if I win it in 25, 26, or 27, obviously the sooner the nicer. We'll actually have to wait.
What do you mean that you feel anymore?
Well, I wanna do it back to back, so you'll probably be ready to win it next year.
Okay, let's do next year, and it's done.
Good.
Well,
That's a
next
good
year, to be
answer.
fair, this is probably going to be released in 25, so let's do it in 25, just to get,
Let me
starting
ask you
line.
guys something. So, when you guys decided to go racing, so do you guys have someone that look after your racing career, or you guys did it by yourself, or your father, or a manager, or because obviously that's probably one of the topic when you guys started to race, or
I, with this is a bit different, but I've never had a manager. I was once close to have one, but this was already later on when I was doing GT.
Mhm.
Um, in, because I remember the name of Robertson when I was in Formula 3 because we were looking and those stuff, but I don't know. It never happened. Obviously, a manager only makes sense if it's a manager like you say, where they say, "Okay, we'll take care of you. We'll do also
Yeah.
the investment or a part of whatever, and we'll bring you there." And that opportunity
Really
never
came.
arose. And then, I mean, nowadays, like I said, I like doing stuff with sponsorship, and I can talk on my behalf. I can also negotiate on my behalf. So I'm like, why would
Yeah.
I give whatever 10, 15, 20% off to a manager to find me a deal which I can do myself? So I've never had one. Maybe it could have helped me when I was in single seaters,
But
but yeah,
was your father
maybe
helping you on some decisions or considerations, or I
yeah,
don't
he
know?
was definitely helping, but he was not experienced in that world. He did some racing as an amateur for fun, but he didn't
I
know
see. I see.
anybody in the teams or Formula One or whatever. Obviously, you can do some phone calls left or right, but yeah, if Raf van Toor from Belgium is calling Jean Todt, let's say, yeah, it's not really going to do much. So for sure he helped, but he didn't have those connections at that level needed to do that.
Yeah, for me it was a bit different. I got into there was like a scholarship on the Belgian Racing Federation, and I've managed to win that. And they then would give me a season in Formula Renault, sponsored by them. Um, but then soon into that season then got finished for the good first rookie season, I think, because normally I was planned to do Formula Renault 1.6, but then this got cancelled, so I had to go straight into 2 liters, which was a tough championship. Uh, but I think I finished sixth or something. But then the next season, they actually dropped a bit their backing. They didn't have the funds anymore. They didn't pay so much anymore. And then the whole thing was a bit different. And on that side, then I had my manager, which is Vincent, but I did not have it back then yet. Um, but also together with my dad, just having people giving their honest opinion and try to lead you to the right way, but
Yeah.
never really something spectacular like like you had, for example.
For sure. And it's very easy to get confused and go to the wrong decision, in racing that I see. 1 year can make such a big difference. You go to the, let's say, wrong team or wrong series, it can do a lot more damage than help. I see that a lot with young drivers, especially
It's
the
like you
beginning of
say,
the career.
there is, in my opinion, for Formula One, you're either an ultra exceptional talent like Verstappen, Vettel, Hamilton, whatever, or even you, and you get picked up by a manager who says, okay, I'll open the roads for you, and I'll help you, or you have 5% less talent, like 50 other drivers, and then it counts, who do you know, which nationality you have, how much backing do you have, are you at the right time at the right place, do you look good, do you look bad? I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah, there's all these things for
all
sure.
those things counts, and I don't consider myself, and I don't know what Dries considers himself, but I think similar, not a Max Verstappen or whatever, so, and then those second things, they weren't also not really there. So I mean, I'm not gonna say I was good enough or not, or Formula One, but that route never really opened. So didn't got far enough in that way to.
It's a tough business for sure, and it's it's the funding, it's the backing, it's the right people next to you, and
And it's
the
also like you
sport is
mentioned,
getting more
the build-up.
expensive too. The build up, yeah.
This is also a good point. Like nowadays, it's impossible to do it with almost no budget, or when you have as a family barely any budget. It's so difficult. It's impossible now. And also back then, like you mentioned, the build-up. Like when you were young, my career, I did go-kart, but I drove around the church 10 times, and that was it. Like you need to do like you really need to do it properly, and then I don't think it's okay. There are maybe 1, 2, 3 rare good talent, but if you do a proper build up and you really prepare the kid as good as possible in every aspect, then it's a different story again, because I believe that yes, it all depends on how good you can adapt to things and how good you read things as when you're being a racing driver. But at the end of the day, there will never be, when you drive the same cars or whatever, will never be somebody else 1 second faster than the other guy, because it's just physically not possible. Yes, you can be a few tenths faster, maybe within changing conditions or reading things different, but I don't believe that there's a guy who will be so many seconds faster than somebody else on a good level.
For sure.
So coming to our last quick fire question before my dollar comes back from the zoo and nobody will be able to hear anything anymore. Your proudest achievement of your career so far?
The proudest achievement, I'll probably pick Daytona this year. For
Which you
sure,
drove
in
very
many
well,
ways.
actually.
Yeah, thank you. For sure, in many ways, that victory was probably the most special because, one, I knew the responsibility of being involved in the project from day one. And, I could see the good and the bad days on the 963, especially the early stage of the program. It was very tricky to get everything going and synchronizing the feedback from drivers, engineers, and even in a bigger aspect, the relationship between Porsche and Penske, and really get involved and creating connection with them. 2023, there was a lot of effort that we put on the table. We didn't see the results right away. So starting 24 with such a big win, my first overall win, but also this whole expectation behind was probably a big statement, because like I said, I could see all the steps until we fight for that big win, and fighting for those that last hour in the race, I did put everything on the line, like everything that I knew as a driver, experience. I remember I didn't have enough fuel to go to the end, so we had to still save fuel and keep the car behind us on that final stint. Was probably one of my my best achievement for sure.
That's nice. What is the dream that you would still like to achieve that you still haven't achieved? I mean, you have an amazing career, but what is still missing for you, or what would you still like to get?
For sure, without any doubt, winning Le Mans overall is still a big goal of mine. There was never a Brazilian driver that won overall.
No. Okay.
So this could be a big history making for the future. I could tell my grandchild, my grandkid, and probably win. I still want to win Daytona a couple more times. And why not be, maybe probably be the biggest winner of IMSA or Daytona. I don't know. Those are the ones that I have on the list as a race driver, and we'll see what the future brings.
Okay. Last one. What's the advice you would give to your younger self? Say 15-year-old Felipe, what would you tell him?
The younger self, I'll probably have taken more decisions on my behalf, on my responsibility, instead of letting on others' hands. But of course, it's easy to say that because today I have the experience, I have the knowledge. But sometimes you have to speak up for yourself, then instead of someone else talking on your behalf, right? So I think I became more vocal as I started to get more experience and older, and I feel that does more help than it does more damage, because if you know what you're gonna say and you know what the people you have to approach, it can only benefit from your career or your personal. It can be in your personal life, but I feel like I was a very quiet person when I was younger. Like I would always be on my own corner, very shy. So I feel that mature with time probably have helped me more. Looking back,
Okay. Sure. Interesting to hear. Well, thank you very much for your time, Felipe. It was
Thank you, guys.
interesting to hear the story.
Thank you, guys.
Sure, everybody will enjoy.
We'll have to do another one because, I mean, I know a little bit of each one of you stories, but we'll have more time in Daytona to sit down.
Yeah.
To sit down and talk.
I'll be on time.
Chris can have a beer, and then we have you can have whatever. I'll have a water. We have the RVs in Daytona, so we can catch up a bit more there.
We'll have a bit more time in Daytona. Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for having the time.
Wish you guys a great 2025 that it's coming through.
Yeah. Thank you.
And see you at the racetrack.
We'll see each other in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
Enjoy the holidays. See you soon.
Thanks, boys. Thank you.